Okay, welcome everybody to the Thursday, March 28th PST-SC's Rubin meeting. Before we begin, I want to say thank you to everybody for coming here today. Those on very westerly time zones for considering a morning meeting time slot, those in Eastern time zones for being able to make it in your day to this time slot as well. That's great. We're trying this early time slot in the hope that we can be as inclusive as possible to colleagues in Europe as well as the States who can do these meetings. So for this meeting, we have another meeting with science collaboration updates as well as a project update. The agenda we have for today is, once I stop introducing, Zeljko has agreed to give a quick project status update. Then we'll have a discussion led by three of the science collaborations, AGN, SLWB, and then TVS. If the discussion overruns, we may borrow some time from a future meeting to finish up the TVS discussion. We'll see how we go. And then in the sort of 2024 sort of line of these meetings, the last 10 minutes or so will be spent to planning the next meeting, any other open questions, and that will not be recorded. So someone should remind me in case I forget to stop recording when we hit the end of our collaboration discussion. So thanks everybody. We'll see how we go, and unless there's any questions or comments at this point, I'll hand it over to Zeljko for the update.
Thank you, Will. I have two brief points to make. If I could share, I'll show two slides.
Should be good now.
Okay, so do you see this slide?
Yes.
So the point of this slide is that there is a lot of activity going on at the summit, and it has been going on for 3 years or so, according to this plot. I just fell in love in this plot when I saw it first time. It was produced by one DM member. It shows data influx into our engineering facility database. So telemetry from the summit is stored in a giant database. It's already 17 terabytes now. And then Angelo went and correlated these peaks in the data influx with various events you can read yourself. So I'm not going to go through details, but this is just a nice visual demonstration how much activity is going on at the summit. And I will switch to my second point. The second point is that we are so close to the end of construction that we can fit the remaining schedule on one slide. This has not been true for a while, but so this summarizes main activities that we have to complete to get to the end of construction. The first vertical red line is now, and you can read that M1, M3 glass is now on cell. Hopefully you saw it on various social networks and project communications channels that we made it glass with the cell, and over next few months, M1, M3 will be coated. It's triple silver for 3 mirrors, as you remember. And then we still expect and hope for the first on-sky images with ComCam in July of this year. It's only 4 months from now. In 4 months from now, we are hopeful to see the first on-sky images. And then a year from now, we hope to have system first light with the main camera. As you know, we had some challenges with turbo pump on the camera, so we had to delay shipment of LSSD cam from March from now, or a week ago, to May. But we now believe that everything is in order and the camera components are being packed at Slack, and we plan to fly the camera to Chile around mid-May. That's super exciting, and from that point on, we have all the major pieces of equipment at the summit, and you can see on this slide our remaining schedule. So first photon with LSSD cam should happen very early next calendar year, and then around the end of March, we should have first light. And then we start Rubin SV, stands for science validation, and that should be hopefully science quality data that we hope to gather and demonstrate that we are ready to start operations and let observatory be run by our scheduler. So I'll stop sharing and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Zeljko. That's indeed very exciting. Any comments or questions from folks?
All right. At some point, I need to switch to my phone because I need to transfer to my office, but I'll be listening to you guys.
I see a question from Meg. Meg, do you want to go ahead?
We just had a question about the dreaded contingency. So how much contingency is left in that schedule? Because I think, or I know that there's always contingency that's there. Just wondering is how much roughly is sort of freely available right now?
Good question. So according to this slide I showed, we should be done around late July, early August of next year, calendar year. And you may recall that the National Science Board, which is oversight board for NSF, approved total project cost of $571 million. We were not allocated all that money. So with money that we have now, we can go 1 month beyond what I showed. But if we request with good reason to get the rest of the money, then we could go to November 15th. So there is some bureaucracy to be done, but it should be relatively straightforward to the extent that it's straightforward with government and bureaucracy. But we should be able to get to 571 without much pain, and that would bring us to November 15th. So we have about 4 months contingency. It's about 25% of the remaining work. That's healthy. Now, at that point, if we were not done, then it would be much more difficult to get additional funds because the governing board of NSF wants to make an example of MREFC project that they can be done on schedule and budget. And so that's why that budget is so strictly controlled. We are not worried yet about that aspect. We do have 4 months on the remaining work, so we should be okay, unless something really bad happens. Will, I see your hand too.
Yeah, thanks, Zeljko. You sort of quasi-addressed my next question, which was, it sounds like you're very confident that a November extension would be approved. Does it work that way, or is it technically competitive? Or
yeah, so total project cost is a number not to exceed, but that doesn't mean that you get all that money on day one of the project. Mm-hmm. You ask as you go, you get money approved. But you cannot cross that limit. So we are not at that limit yet. And that difference is what will bring us from August of 25 to mid-November of 25.
Okay, so the request is, can you spend it that way rather than, right, is it there?
If we don't need it, we won't get it. We have to justify that we need it. So if you get delayed beyond what I told you, we'll get it. If we don't get delayed, we won't get it. Now, if we get delayed, if something unfortunate happens, and we should go beyond November 15th, that's when you start worrying and scratching your head how to get additional funds. Yeah. At this moment, modulo unexpected, unplanned events, we believe everything is in order with funding and that we can execute on the schedule that we have and these additional 25% schedule contingency.
Okay, well, thanks for the clarification. That's helpful. We have about a minute for any more questions on this. Any more comments or thoughts? All right, if not, then thanks very much again, Zeljko. That was terrific. And thanks, Meg, for the question. All right, so the next agenda item I have is our science collaboration update. We had 3 at the last one of these meetings, and this meeting, 3 of our collaborations kindly agreed to talk. I have them in the following order: AGM followed by SMWLV followed by TVS. So we'll go in that order. I believe Matthew Temple will be presenting on behalf of AGN. Matthew has recently been elected to the co-chair position of AGN, so we're really excited to hear what he has to say. Matthew, if you're ready, please feel free.
Okay, thanks, Will. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, we see the. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah. So as Will said in his introduction, I've recently taken over from Gordon Richards as one of the 2 co-chairs of the AGN Science Collaboration. For those who don't know me, hello, I'm Matthew Temple. I'm currently at Diego Portales in Chile, but as of May, I will be moving to Durham in the UK. And the other co-chair is Neil Brandt, who I'm sure many of you know, who's currently on the call. He's at Penn State. So following the format from last time, we're going to start off with some recent highlights from the science collaboration and then move on to some potential things we could maybe do with some help with from the project. So just to start with the positive things, we've been growing as a collaboration. We've been having steady sort of 2-3 membership applications every month. And when I looked at the list yesterday, we just had our 200th member join the collaboration, which I think is a very good milestone. Although we should perhaps note that some of those members have since left astronomy and need to actually keep cleaning the list as we go along. But we are growing, and as part of that, we're starting to do more science. So we've recently populated the publications panel, due in part to the fact that we have people asking questions about we're writing a paper and how do we get it approved by the collaboration. So that's all positive news. Since I've taken over in January, I've identified that 2 of the 4 subgroups that we currently have had become inactive and hadn't really been working for the past sort of couple of years. And so over the past couple of months, we've been working to put in place new leadership for those working groups, and that's now happened. So moving forwards, hopefully we've got some fresher blood and also younger blood taking the lead within the working groups, which will hopefully help push forward the science as well. We are organising an in-person meeting in July. We're kindly being hosted by ENAF in Turin. Unfortunately, the funding requirements for ENAF and the availability of the venue meant that this is going to end up clashing with the workshop in the US in July. But unfortunately, it was kind of by the time we'd got the funding constraints, there wasn't much we could do about that, and also trying to deconflict with the AGN meetings. But the feedback we've also got is that for people in Europe, it'll be good to have an in-person meeting that they can attend that they might not be able to afford to fly all the way to the US. So moving on to some sort of questions we have, and some of these are points from me and some of them are points from other members of the collaboration that I've been sort of asking what they might need or need help with. And the first point from me is kind of taking over as a co-chair in terms of interfacing with the collaboration as a whole. We've got the community platform, which is where we tend to archive our telecon minutes and things like that. And so I said we just had 200 members in the collaboration, but fewer than 100 have actually joined community. So I had some engagement with Melissa about how we can actually add members to the AGNSC group on community, but it'd be good to have that sort of written up and confirmed. And she said there was sort of work going on there. So I'm looking forward to seeing what happens with that when Melissa's ready. But this is both with people with and without existing community accounts. And related to that is also, in terms of the contacts database, are there any future plans for that as we move towards operations and we need to start keeping track of who has data rights and who doesn't? Is there any thought been gone into how that's going to work? So that's the first point. The second point is more on the data management side. For AGN science, and in particular for selection, classification, photometric redshift, it's really, really, really useful to have the differential chromatic refraction information. We've been told in the past from DM that we should expect some sort of DCR information, but we don't know exactly what that will be or how that will be provided. And we're getting to the point where it'd be really, really helpful to have enough of an idea of how will the DCR information be passed out to the community such that we can start simulating that and training algorithms with the simulated data. So if there's any updates on that, it'd be great to hear about that. Thirdly, we have several in-kind contribution teams that are working within the collaboration on various things. One of the questions they had was what support, if any, is going to be available to help sort of integrate their products with the data management system. And I appreciate that's quite a vague question, but in terms of if they're producing an algorithm, what's the best place to point them towards to help get help with that? And finally, this is actually a point from Neil on the deep drilling field cadence. We had a white paper which was arguing for the idea of an accordion cadence in the deep drilling fields. I believe that was going to be tested, but we've not heard whether that's actually been implemented yet in any of the metrics, sorry, not metrics, in any of the simulation runs or the op sims. So if there's any updates on that, that'd also be really interesting to hear. So that's all from me. I'm sure, is there any questions or comments?
Well, I mean, speaking of the sort of DM-ish person, I've never understood why you're worried about what you're going to get from DCR. I mean, I understand the application, it goes back to Sloan days. We will generate the data, we'll know the air mass, you can calculate, or we can calculate what the effect is. But you're expecting DM to provide some other information, and I've never quite understood what you want. So if you have a write-up on that, that would be really helpful. I mean, not the whole...
Sure. So I guess the question is, how will that information be catalogued and
what
served?
information precisely that you can't calculate yourselves? What are you expecting us to do?
Robert, I believe Gordon Richards has prepared a white paper that gives some of that information. And if there's anything that's not answered by that white paper, I'm sure Gordon will be happy to provide it. He's the one who's been taking the lead there. So Matthew may not know every technical intricacy of it.
I mean, so at one point we had been, I don't know if Gordon had been told there was a rumor that there would be effectively sub-band magnitudes being calculated and provided, but we weren't told what those sub-bands would be. If you're just saying that all we will have is the air mass and the astrometry of the photocenter for each source, then that in itself is useful to know, and we can start working with that.
I think that's what you should assume for the first year, but we can get an official statement on that from maybe Leanne.
Astrometry and air mass. Okay.
And if I may, the white paper to which Neil refers, I think that's one of the Cadence white papers from a couple of years ago. But Neil, maybe you and I should confirm that offline.
That's fine. I'll dig it up and send it around. Yep.
Then, yeah, that'd be great.
I obviously know that Gordon has been pushing this. It just wasn't clear what the action was that you were asking for. The sub-band stuff I get, and I think it's unlikely.
Okay.
Well, it may take a little while to refine these questions, so I encourage the interaction. This is good to see. Fed, do you have a comment on this, or do you have a different question?
Yes, I do have a comment on this. That DCR is relevant for also some transient and variable start time collaboration phenomena. And so we have worked on a paper that is on the archive where we invited Yusra, Jim, and Ian Sullivan to be co-authors. So there might be some relevant information for you in that paper, which is posted on the archive, and the link is in the chat. And Riley Clark is the first author.
Ah, yes, okay. This is that single measurement, temperature measurement, isn't it? Through.
Yes, this is correct. The application is to use DCR to measure temperature of flares, but we have a technical section, which I think is called something like recommendations for data reduction or something like that, which, as I said, we have DM members on the author team to make sure that we would both understand what we get from Rubin and perhaps influence it.
That's great, thank you.
I've put in the chat, Robert, some of the writings that Gordon has prepared. And if that doesn't give you what you want, I'm sure Gordon will be happy to communicate with you.
I guess for me, the more pertinent question is, there's clearly a conversation that needs to happen, right? It's how best to have that conversation. What's the best chance to go through? Is it the DM liaison, or is it somewhere else?
Well, now that this discussion has started here, I imagine the three of you could even just by email could have this discussion, I suppose.
Okay.
On community. Leanne, do you have your hand up?
Yeah, hi. In terms of how the discussion should happen, I can take this back to data management and discuss it with the relevant people, and we can set up a some sort of forum to have a discussion in.
Okay, thanks.
I don't know what that will be, whether it'll be a Slack channel or we'll get a meeting together, or we'll invite you guys to come to one of our DM science team meetings to give us an overview of what sort of information you'd like. But I'll talk to the team first.
Thank you, Leanne. That's great. Steve and Fed both have your hand up. Who wants to go first?
Fed first.
No, sorry, it was an old end.
Well, in that case, Steve, you're up.
Oh, okay. Just want to say, both from the last meeting and this meeting, we are capturing each of these, and we'll respond either directly to the science collaboration or just have a couple of slides in a future one of these meetings as well. So it's not like they're just going out there. We're trying to make them, we will give answers, and also obviously in this particular case, it involves an engagement.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Neil, you have a comment?
Well, just a follow-up. So regarding the last bullet point here, I may have fallen out of contact the past couple of weeks, but I was, as of at least a couple of weeks ago, I was not aware yet of any actual simulations of accordion cadences for the deep drilling fields. Has that situation changed yet, or is that still up in the air?
Can I tentatively answer that? So
Please do.
this is a task force, so it works somewhat independently of me. So I just keep track of the work of the task force through regular updates. But yes, I believe there's a lot of activity on simulation, on the production, the commissioning of simulations, and the production of simulations that has been going on in the task force.
Great. Do you know if that includes simulation of accordion cadences?
So I believe it does,
Okay, good.
but let's just make sure that you touch base with Saurabh as the chair of that task force.
Yes, I'll catch back up on that as soon as I can. I've been very busy, but I'll get on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. Meg, you have a comment?
Yeah, it's a little bit related to what Steve said and what's also in this slide. I guess my one concern is that this is information that should be in documentation. And so my worry is that we're going to get stuff in slides, and it's very valid to say what DCR information we're getting. And so I think that ties back into thinking about how can the CST get this information somewhere so it's available multiple times. So that we have it in the future, whether that's a website, some dedicated something. I just worry about putting that some of this stuff is coming up because we don't know where to find it in the documentation, because there's lots of PDFs, or it might not be in the PDF, or it's in some community posts.
Got it.
So maybe something to highlight that that's the theme I'm starting to see from these presentations.
No, the answers will also point to documentation, and one of several of your bullets last time, or from your science collaboration bullets, were about documentation, which we certainly appreciated. So we hear you. Thank you. And Leanne has a hand up.
The next topic, but just before I do that, I'll respond to Meg. One of the actions that we've been taking to do with the survey strategy is to try to communicate a little bit better some of the work and how we will make changes to the survey strategy, how we will evolve it as we go through our operations, how we will communicate things. And we started to put together a website that I've linked in the meeting chat. It is still a very draft version. Please bear this in mind. But this, Meg, is where we might, where you would expect to see things like planning for a DDF cadence, for example.
That's great, Leanne. Thank you for sharing that. That's terrific.
Yeah, it's still very draft though. Lynn's only just started working on it recently.
So do you and or Lynn want input on this then? Like on an informal basis, maybe, or? Sure,
yeah. I mean, the sort of things that you'd like to see on this survey strategy documentation page. Is that what you mean, or are you talking specifically about testing of accordion cadences?
No, the former actually is sort of.
Okay. Yeah, that would be great. I mean, we haven't released a draft, a version 1.0 yet to people to start to work with, because Lynn's just put together. You'll find that most of these links don't contain a great deal yet. But we wanted to have one sort of place where people could come to learn about the strategy, to understand things about what is the baseline, how do we evolve it, what are the factors in evolving it. I know this has been discussed a lot within SCOC meetings and with the project, but something a bit more publicly and open facing that brings everything together in one point, like an easy place to find things. So we're going to be moving forwards on that throughout the course of this year and as we get closer to operations. Testing of accordion cadences, I haven't heard anything about this, but I can also take this back and talk to Lynn about it, but I don't know anything about it. Fed would know. Fed's already responded to that and knows more about it than me.
Sorry, I heard I missed something. Do I need to answer to something?
No, just saying that you know more about the DDF cadence than I do.
Oh, yes.
That's all.
But again, the task force is in progress, so we can hear report if desired, or we can make sure that the relevant sense.
Yeah.
Solutions.
I think that the place to discuss things like, how we're going to test according cadences, or what even is the DDF cadence and that sort of stuff, it's with the SCOC. This website is meant to communicate those decisions and those strategies towards the public and the community.
So that's right, but when we organize in task forces like we did for the DDF, we will have a variety of material that is produced by the task force itself, like documents and reports to the SCOC. Those materials usually get posted in the SCOC webpage as they become available to us. But I entirely agree that we need a more user-friendly web space, because now we have a large collection of documents that arrive and came from the SCOC that is not very parsable.
And that's what this is supposed to be that central point where people can go to find that information.
Yes, exactly.
Well, thank you very much. Speaking of moving forward, we probably should give our next science collaboration waiting in the line a chance to speak. Yes.
Sorry, I actually put my hand up to respond to the other point that was on the page, which was about integrating in-kind contributions into the DM system. Did we discuss that?
We have not.
That was a
Kristen,
point.
unless you object, we can spend a minute discussing that. Okay, Leanne, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the point was, and I just want to get more clarification on it. It said, the slide's not up anymore, but I think it said, how do we integrate in-kind contributions into the DM system? Is that what it said? And if so, I think I'd like a bit more clarity on it. I mean, are you talking about a specific algorithm to compute quantities that might go in the official release catalogs? Are you talking about CPUs or GPUs to support processing? I mean that's a very big statement. So I think I'd like a little bit more clarity.
Yeah, that's completely fair. That's completely fair. I suggest I'll get the person who asked that, I'll tell them to get in contact with
Okay,
me.
great. We can take this offline if you like. I don't need a specific answer now. Just I can't answer that unless you give me a few more details.
Yeah, I fully understand it hasn't come from me. So yes, I'll get the person.
Thanks. Thank you.
I think this process of clarification of what these conversations are important for. So thanks for raising that. Okay, well, thank you very much again, Matthew. That was terrific, and Neil. Moving on, we have a presentation from our newly appointed co-chair of SMWLV, who's here on the call, Kristen Day. Kristen, you ready to go?
Yes. So like Will said, I have been co-chair for maybe a little bit over a month. So this is my best stab at an overview. So it's me and Peregrine are doing it, and it's very nice. And so I think one of the things that's really interesting about SMWLV is that we have this very broad range of science goals. So we have the solar neighborhood, science working groups, variable stars, star clusters, the galactic bulge, the Magellanic clouds, galactic structure and ISM and near field cosmology, and then connections with quite a lot of different task forces. So I've just picked a couple of the different science working groups and task forces to highlight, and then I went to them and asked them for input. And so for the solar neighborhood, for some of these groups, we're just getting reinvigorated. So the solar neighborhood is a great example of that. John Gizis recently held a workshop on ultra-cool dwarfs, and I think it went very well. And so I think that's going to help get more activity there. The crowded stellar fields task force, it sounds like things are going quite well with them. I talked to Massimo D'Allora, and I stole this picture from their meeting notes. It's pretty cool. So they have been able to make stars on the basis of observed CMD and inject them, and then try to run them through the pipeline. And so they're trying to focus on sort of more specific things, like in this case, characterization of crowding error. We've also had some joint meetings, cross-pollination meetings between the Star Cluster Science Working Group and the Crowded Fields, and that's been going well. And then maybe this is a little bit of a bias here, but I wanted to talk about the Star Cluster Science Working Group. I would say that this is one of the most active ones. And one of the things that's really great about it is that it's just a very collaborative and enthusiastic group. And thanks to Brazil's Linea group, we actually have a ton of student involvements here. And so we do have a lot of focus on extragalactic globular clusters right now specifically, and so people with those interests have sort of started their own task force, and so they want to build this extragalactic globular classification tool. And the idea is that you could take photometric inputs from LSDB and then plug them into some sort of a black box with maybe a PCA or a neural network, test different kinds of models and figure out how good are we at characterizing globular clusters. And then this is a nice science overlap we have with people who care about galaxies, because of course galaxy evolution and globular cluster properties and distribution are intertwined. And then we have another little group, and this one is very nice because it's led by a graduate student out of Brazil, it's working on the feasibility of detecting optical transients in globular clusters, extragalactic clusters. So out to what distance and what completeness can we find, different events. So some of the challenges that we're facing is a lot of these is we want to find practice data sets. And so it's just defining the right data set can be challenging. One thing that we had been batting around a bit was it would be amazing if we could have, extragalactic globular clusters and TP0 data. So we did try to make some progress on this, and I think it just kind of fell off last year, but I recently was poking around the DP0 tutorials and I found this notebook. But if there was, some, direction of how we could work with this really fantastic resource to sort of, make it fine tune it more towards the needs of the different SMWLV science collaborations, I think that would help a lot, especially for the students we have involved. And then the other thing that we've been talking about is, I put this image of NGC 4472 up just to think about globular clusters, but finding point sources in the outskirts of the galaxy will be easy with the photometric list. But as you go more and more towards the center of the galaxy, how will working with the background contaminating light to detect these work. So that's also something that we're thinking about. And then the galactic structure in the interstellar medium group. So it's a small but enthusiastic group meetings that meet about monthly, and they've worked together to identify some key themes. So, extending Gaia studies for our galactic structure work, working with the Solar Neighborhood Science Working Group to study ultra-cool dwarfs as probes with a halo, looking at dust and low surface brightness studies, and thinking about precision photometry and essential. So I think it's, nice that that's also plugging along quite nicely. So I made this synthesis slide just to, as an overview. And I think that we have some very, very, active and very passionate science working groups. And like I said, I'm very happy that we have a lot of students, sort of spearheading different projects off of this. And even though we really do cover a very broad range of topics, I think there's a lot of cross connections we've been able to make, which have been good. But then some of our challenges, like I said, are just, how can we find, data sets where we can build our tools in a good way. And then I just threw this on there. Matthew mentioned something in a slide about Contact DB that I resonated with me very much, so I thought I would repeat that. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you so much, Kristen. Great presentation. Indeed, lots of reinvigorated activity in this collaboration, which is, I'm sure, no coincidence that you've recently become co-chair. Any comments or questions from anybody? Leanne.
Hi, thanks for that, Kristen. So just maybe to respond to two of your points there, you made a point about source injection and notebooks, and you made a point also about finding Rubin-like data sets. So I can confirm that source injection is the way to go if you want to get different types of objects into the DP0 data set that aren't there already. So you mentioned extragalactic globular clusters. There's also many others out, AGNs, all sorts of stuff isn't there. And we recognize that this is a limited data set. We have, however, closed out the DP0 series of data previews. DP0 is by definition simulated data, so what you call Rubin-like data, simulated. We're not going to produce any more simulations, and we're not going to do any more with this. We're busy preparing now for what's going to be DP1, which is going to be some form of real data from LSST. We don't know exactly what yet because commissioning is still progressing and there's a lot of uncertainties. So the way to go if you want to do science now with DP0 is to use that notebook that you found, source injection. And recently the Science Pipelines team have put a lot of effort into developing the source injection tools to inject all sorts of different types of objects. So please try that out. Please let us know, ask questions on the community forum. You may be aware that we have a new set of Rubin Science sessions on Thursdays. They actually coincide with this meeting, so I'm missing that now. But it's a Rubin Science Fair. It replaces the old delegate assemblies. And every second week, there is a presentation from the community science team, and then every other week, you can just come along and ask questions. So if you want to come along and ask questions about using source injection to get some help, you can do that. And I can also feedback that it might be good to see if we can produce some more examples of tutorials with using source injection.
Yeah, that would be great. Some of my students attend the weekly meetings that you were mentioning and they love it.
Okay, that's great.
I've been finding it really helpful. I almost wonder if what we should do is, like have a meeting dedicated to, everybody that attends the meeting learns how to do the source injection. Cause I think that would be super helpful because we've been sort of like shopping around to find like, deep photometric surveys and use those. But like, in my opinion, it's, not as ideal as being able to leverage this amazing data set in some way.
Yeah, I agree. I think it would be good to use source injection. The other one about finding Rubin-like data sets, I think I've just addressed that. We're not actually going to create any more simulated data sets and put them on the science platform for hosting, which is why I think that you should, as we just said, use DP0, inject your favorite type of object based on properties, and then wait for DP1, which will be some form of real data, but we're not sure exactly what it's going to look like yet.
That'll be exciting.
Yeah, can you remind those of us who might have forgotten when DP1 is due to come out?
It will be probably early next year-ish.
Early 2025.
Look at LS.
It's going to be, yeah.
But as Steve says, ls.st/date, I think it is. Yeah. Okay.
And links there.
Sorry, Leanne, did you say that you'd already discussed the precursor data set issue?
Yes. Yeah, that's good.
Okay. Any other comments or questions for SMWLV? Going once, going twice. Okay, seeing none, let's thank Kristen again for a great presentation, and thanks Leanne for a good discussion. It's now 12:43 Eastern. I think we can start the discussion for TDS. If we run out of time for the discussion, which I would like to not last past 12:55. No, sorry, 12:50. Then we can move on to give TVS some time in the next meeting when we discuss science collaborations. But since they've prepared some material, Igor, would you like to start a discussion on TDS?
Yeah, absolutely. Can you see my slides and hear me well?
No.
We can hear you, but not see the slides.
Okay.
It's saying loading that's what we see.
There we go.
There it is. We just had
But do you see not as a slideshow? Sometimes Google Slides does this on Zoom, unfortunately.
We can see it fine as is without the presentation mode, actually. Now it's become back to loading.
Okay, just one quick last try.
We see the slides. Whoops.
Yeah, so I'm now trying to do slideshow on one screen and then share the full screen, the full desktop. Let's see if it works. It's a bit of a trick.
Yes, we
see it. Can you see it now?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, wonderful. So I have quite a bit of content, but I'll try to be brief and actually give you then a chance to look more in details, thanks to the links and information. Yep.
I'm sorry, Igor. I can give you the full 10 minutes because the next time we meet, it won't be the same people in the room. So we'll just do the planning part of the meeting offline.
Okay.
So you have until at least 12:55.
All right, sounds good. So I would like to offer some updates on behalf of the TVS people. Sarah Bonito is also on the line and is the co-chair with me of the science collaboration. And just at a glance, you can check out what's happening on our website. Some of the most exciting highlights are that we're really growing and growing fast as a science collaboration. I think also thanks to like a lot of PR that people are doing and in workshop and whatnot. We have more than 540 members right now, and many are quite recently joining. I think a lot of the output can be seen in the form of papers, and I will expand later. A lot of Kickstarter projects were developed as part of TVS or with a good involvement from TVS people. And we also have a lot of in-kinds that refer directly to TVS as a recipient, one of which is actually regarding the contact DB. So probably for Matthew, if that's also concern for different science collaboration, this is something that can be discussed further and offline. We have a full series of colloquia led by junior scientist Michela Pesci, and a bunch of workshops and conferences have been organized in the last years, in particular, to further encourage people to get involved and to get work done together as part of TVS. And TVS members have been really gracious at putting together slides with all the highlights from the past couple of years. So if you have the time, please check out the slide deck that maybe can be linked if Will wants to. We will manage to share the slides at some point. So TVS inherently touches on a lot of topics. Something I would like to highlight are two things. One is that people are really trying to go for the new, of course, is in line with the mission of Rubin, new techniques for the most well-established science cases, and a lot of push for the unknown, maybe the faster transient variables, the hardest to catch, where we think Rubin can truly make a big difference on top of everything that can be further improved with precision. And the roadmap has been submitted and I think accepted this time as a peer review paper in PASP. The effort spearheaded by Rachel for the Kickstarters has been a huge success, especially for data analysis, as you can see from the word cloud. And I hope to see more of such initiatives in the future if we're lucky enough to get those fundings. So again, in a nutshell, what worked well, Sarah and I agreed that seeing so much activity and involvement from collaboration people was key. I highlighted here some of these initiatives, and you can see in purple that in many cases, and sometimes actually there is the generosity, like multiple people have contributed to the different bits, but there is a lot of junior leadership from PhD students to postdoc or junior scientists in general, in position where they can organize events, make a difference, and learn, I think, themselves a variety of skills and truly push forward on our mission. Something else that you may notice is that something that is becoming more and more relevant are efforts across science collaborations, for which we always try to be positive and encouraging about. Also, a lot of work has been done as part of the DP0. And if you want to know more, I think Sarah in particular can say a couple of words about that. And in general, probably like every other science collaboration, we have a lot of calls, dedicated activities, announcements, and even some fellowships are mainly related to the in-kinds to push TVS science. In terms of publications, there were more than 17 just in the last year and a half, 2 years. Here just highlighted a summary. Mainly these were published as part of the APJS special issue. but more are also published in other journals. And I think the main help that all this work have given is truly directed towards the definition of the survey cadence. And I'm happy to see how many people are contributing actively to serve as liaisons. A liaison for other collaborations, for various committees, other groups such as the EPO, and in particular also the Council for the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. So a big thank you to all the people who have done this type of very important service. Another quite hot, relevant now in this moment type of topic that is very much across multiple science collaboration, but where TVS has been good, at least in terms of participation, is helping in understanding when and how target of opportunity observations should be carried out with Rubin. Obviously, this type of observation are more relevant for some of the explosive transients or some type of variables. Probably that's why there was a very big participation at the latest workshop from TVS people. But it was truly great to see people from other SEs contributing and leading parts of the recommendation that we're working on and that we will put forward to the SCOC. A few notes on what we think can be improved and challenges, some of which we have highlighted in the past, but just to be a bit more comprehensive, we know that, well, TVS, unlike DESC, is not quite the same model in terms of finances, financial support, but there are more and more initiatives within TVS, perhaps not centralized, but very much in which very much involvement is there from TVS members in the US and abroad via either national or international dedicated initiatives. Something that for sure will be challenging is transitioning to using real data. Brokers will be key for doing that, especially for the transient and variable component when it comes to real-time operations, most of all. And I think there's been excellent participation at quite a few workshops that the various brokers have organized in the last year. It will be interesting to see how the role of the subgroups that are dedicated to different science cases and to the task forces will evolve as data will start flowing in. And we will try, I think, to keep coordination high in order to improve science whenever possible. A couple of items for improvements. My understanding is that in particular on the side of stellar science, there could be quite a good need of more or different types of light curves in DP0s for people to truly get ready for when data will start flowing in. And a little logistical note that the Zoom memberships for TVS and probably for also the other collaborations have been discontinued, which means that every time we're meeting after 45 minutes, we have to ask everyone to log out and log back in. And I really hope we can find a ready solution for that, because it's truly a small yet annoying problem to have. And hopefully, yeah, can be resolved in just a few hours. And I would stop here unless Sarah has something else that she would like to add. Happy to get questions.
Is this Zoom problem unique to TVS or to all science collaborations?
I think a lot of other collaboration shares are using their institutional Zoom for meetings. So I've not heard reports of this yet, but I don't know if that's just a lack of data.
Yeah, on AGN, we use institutional ones, and it's always been fine there. But I guess with this large of a group, it might be difficult. Yeah.
I see Fed, your hands up.
Yeah, the LSST Corporation before, when it was a corporation, now the Discovery Alliance used to provide Blue Jeans connections for the science collaboration. Then they moved to Zoom connections, but they've curtailed the licenses because they're expensive for obvious reasons. Part of the problem, I think, is that TVS has a lot of meetings. We don't have just like the one monthly meeting. And so if we have a Zoom connection that is different for each one of those, it does become chaotic. And it will be much better to have a single point of contact and a single place where most of the large meetings can be handled.
Yeah, thanks for specifying. This was exactly the problem. It's not even correct that just one institution monopolizes that or takes all the responsibility of having the Zoom room open. And so far has been quite instrumental to have a kind of centralized resource for all the meetings. People know exactly where to go when they want to meet with other TVSers.
One quasi solution is to use Google Calendar and then put whatever Zoom link it is into that calendar event. That's at least one place for the user to look at, but that's also not entirely ideal. Okay, we've got about 3 minutes left in the hour before we will go our separate ways. Are there any questions or comments for Igor or Sarah that TVS can address quickly before we move on? All right, in that case, well, thank you very much to Igor and Sarah for presenting. That was terrific. It's great to see TVS growing in leaps and bounds. Since we're a little low on time here, I would encourage folks to take a look at a few notes I've added to section 4 in the Agenda Live notes to do with how the next meetings will go. In particular, there's a few topics that some science collaboration chairs have suggested for possible future meetings that we need to discuss. I think that Steve, Fed, and myself will be reviewing this meeting to see how successful this time slot was before working to decide the time slot for the next meeting. But the last week of April, unless we hear otherwise, there will be a meeting that week. The current penciled in topic for that is to finish the science collaboration updates. So that would be Galaxies and Desk. But please stay tuned for updates, and we're always open to requests and suggestions. Stephen and Fed, do you have anything to add to that?
I don't, just thanks, and thanks for everyone for filling in the poll. This was the least bad time. It didn't work for everybody, and I apologize to those of you who are watching the video and who couldn't join us. We'll continue to try to assess.
Terrific. Oh, well, thank you, everybody. Good to see you all again, and hope you enjoy the 90 seconds back. Oh, Leanne has a hand up. Sorry,
and maybe
Leanne.
just a point is that this time for this meeting, it does clash with the Rubin Science Assemblies that I think a lot of people in science collaborations might want to go to. I'd encourage you to go to them because that's where you're going to learn about doing things like source injection, et cetera, especially when DP1 data starts to come. And that also was a very difficult, challenging, a challenge in terms of scheduling, because we also have to accommodate Europe and the US because the global community wants to come. And there's a resistance to having meetings on Fridays so that it gives people free time to think and work. So we moved it from the Friday morning time slot. Also for Europeans, coming to a science assembly at 6 p.m. on Friday night is not exactly the best. If you have to come in the evening, Thursday night's better than Friday night.
Noted. Thanks very much for pointing that out. All right. Well, in that case, thank you all again, and good to see you. And stay tuned for next month.
Thank you. Bye-bye.